The stern set of their shoulders and timing of the visit heralded trouble. 5 of them arrived sharp as a golf ball, golfs, and golf body. I was just getting comfortable in my new home when I saw them. My coffhouse was getting cold, my boxes still closed. Before I could say anything, hello courtesy was served, I was told. Remove the dock by Friday, or face immediate penalties. The HOA contested my actions. My dock was troublesome, as was I. Now, these people had a surprise on the way. It was their mistake to assume I was restrained and ready to revert the actions I took contrary. My stand was solid, and was backed by a find of a certain supervisor's basement. What was my reasoning to remove the dock? How did my actions of constructing the dock piece by piece trigger their annoyances? When the HOA was tasked with zoning and delineations, they got way over their heads. The dream took only a decade. I had my key, and seeking the area, I was finally ready for my vision to materialize. Lake Haven Estates was my ultimate neighborhood shelter. Tucked behind was a peaceful cove, long pine trees and calm water, with mornings enticing in their earthy smells, and the only sound at dawn, the soft burst of fish breaking the waters. The house I bought had white siding, a wraparound porch, and a private stretch of shoreline where I could drop a kayak and disappear into the mist. During a single weekend visit, I bought the house without seeing it first. Working remote tech support, I was a single dad raising my daughter Mia, who was 10 at the time. I promised her a fresh start and raised her on pancakes and bedtime stories. After a divorce, moving cities, and years of living under someone else's rules, it was the peace I craved. Mia was excited too. The first day inside was filled with laughter and sunshine. I even let her decorate her room how she wanted. It was a new start for both of us. I also built a small dock for myself to drink coffee on to watch the sunrise. It took 3 weekends to make, but it was mine. Or so I thought. Preserving community aesthetics and shared waterway access was the vague reasoning the HOA brochure had. I ignored it, since every bit of the brochure was filled with legal terms and my imagination was busy picturing my daughter skipping stones on the edge of the privately owned water. Then came the email. Subject: Violation Notice. Illegal construction on common waterway. At first, I found it amusing. It had to be a mistake, but the attached photograph left no room for doubt. It was my dock circled in red. The message I received was just as cold. Per Section 7.3b of the Covenants, docks are prohibited without prior approval. Removal required within 14 days. 14 days? I had just completed building it. I composed a response where I remained courteous and even explained my lack of knowledge as to the rules, requested for an extension, and stated I would be willing to file for retroactive approval. Yet, the response I received was not personal. It was a response from the board, and it was on letterhead. That was the moment I first encountered the name, Diane Ralston, HOA President, and in the signature block, one tiny line that didn't belong, Waterway Compliance Supervisor, County Division of Recreational Access. That title struck me as odd. I thought to myself, fine, I'll go through the hoops if that's what it takes. I completed and submitted the forms and the plans, and just waited. That is, until the fines began to appear. I was charged $150, then $300, and then non-compliance fines of $500 were introduced. That's when the realization hit me. It was crystal clear to me that these fines had nothing to do with the violation of dock rules. They were purely to get me to leave. The first fine hit me like a ton of bricks. Unauthorized structure, continued violation, was the message I received, and I was charged $150. With the delusion that it would be the sole fine I would face, I quickly paid the amount. A mix-up, a slight oversight, an administrative itch tended to. Yet, another notice was sent, but this time it was 3 days later. Now, it was $300. Failure to adhere to the removal notice incurs the removal compliance fee. The fee is relaxed at $200, but only for a limited time. Why was it timed? That question was the exact quandary the framed, postured voice had 7 escaped to. Labeled defiance? That is a strong term. Each interaction I had had an illusion of submission postured the grounds for compliance only. I had attempted to rationalize. A splash of anger gnawed me. Exhaling deeply, I attempted to control the impulse and patiently extracted the urge to burst the bubble the air hovered in. Once I rose to my point, there was this omnipresent frigid glare. Her displeasure for my mere existence was glaring. Not once did she acknowledge me, staring unreachable and fuming pens. She volunteered. You will not be addressed to and zero account every during self-defined time periods. You seek me at my hours, and request is written down. Written request? Why? Stating I wish to dock a wooden platform to my house? Get down to the ground and ease an ounce of bluntness. Out of the tail of my eye, I saw an attractive woman, fresh, visibly angered. Why was I describing her? Surroundings in reality would not emerge. The front row was not the last, but I had mentally geared myself to control flood of anger aimed through the mask white space had adopted before me. The next minutes passed. The window and the area flooded in blaring sunlight. Among the blaring rays, she was scattering the dirt we had seen interspersed with clouds and pollen. The only stamp one could put was a yellow one. A cheer endowed my front door. Bright and unavoidable, the sign screamed. Final notice. Structure to be removed by 5:00 p.m. Friday. Failure to comply will result in contractor enforcement at owner's expense. Contractor enforcement? I thought. They're going to tear it down for me and then send me the bill? Afterward, I contacted the county zoning and spent 40 minutes waiting only to be transferred multiple times. In the end, a weary-sounding person said, "If the HOA governs the covenants, they have the authority to enforce them whether you agree or not." I interjected, "But it's my property." "On paper, yes, but you signed the agreement when you bought the house. That dock, it's in a shared riparian zone. Technically, you need permission." "Even though the house was sold with waterfront access advertised?" Silence. "That's between you and the HOA." My heart raced as I hung up. My daughter Mia asked why a grocery store employee was staring at me. She leaned in saying, "She said you're the man making trouble." I did not sleep. After hearing and piecing everything together, I concluded to my self-made solution. I was going to cut off the dock. Out of sheer exhaustion, not because they were correct. Fed up with the stress, the harassment, the fines, the whispers, I decided to rent a jackhammer and began prying up the first plank. That was the moment I noticed something unusual. There was a piece of folded paper under the second support beam, but it was not trash. It was placed there intentionally, and it was sealed in a waterproof pouch. When I extracted the paper, it turned out to be a survey map, but not from the county's records. It was labeled Lake Haven Estates, Phase 2 Expansion Proposal, Confidential. Right in the center was marked my lot and my dock, but the shoreline was redrawn and my entire waterfront was labeled Future Public Access Point, Waterway Beautification, Community Kayak Launch. They were not mad about the dock. Instead, they wanted it eliminated so they could construct a community dock financed by HOA dues and controlled by HOA President Diane. It felt like the pieces suddenly fit together. The fines, the urgency, the permit denial. They didn't have control at the dock. And that's what it was, about utter disregard for rules, control, and silencing. I decided to stop tearing up the dock. I opted to scan the document and emailed it to a local reporter I found, someone who investigated local government corruption. So I figured I'd use the neighborhood Facebook group to ask the question that everyone must have been wondering. Why is the HOA planning a public dock on my property? Obviously, including a map screenshot too would make it more eye-catching. Within a couple of hours, I got the notification that my post was removed. The group admin, surprise, surprise, deleted my post and proceeded to ban my account on the group, but not before circulation of the screenshots. I began to receive phone calls. People from the neighborhood that I had never come into contact with before. "We have been paying extra for no reason," one neighbor said. "They did the tennis courts, but they never serviced the sewer line." "Diane's husband is the contractor," a neighbor added. Another neighbor said, "They charged the Millers for $2,000 for harboring a Navy front door on the home. They stated that it clashed with the community pallet." This was not for my concern only. This was a trend. Approaching the HOA, I requested for their financial records, only to find out I was legally entitled to them. I then proceeded with a certified letter, which went unanswered. So I sent them another one, but this time I specifically stated cite state law, gave them a time window of 14 days. Surprisingly, just 2 days after my timer went off, I had a brand new notice in my possession. This time, however, It was not a fine. Instead, it was a lawsuit, said to have been filed by the HOA for 12.0 in damages, defamation, unauthorized dissemination of private documents, and incitement of community unrest. 12,000 for just asking questions about community documents? While I sliced my kitchen, my hands shivering with rage from tea, everything was dated 5 years prior to when I moved in. The HOA wasn't just planning to take my dock. They had budgeted for it, had secured the grant, selected the contractor, and even designed a community dock that had a logo and included rental fees. However, there was one obstacle. The property was mine. The previous owner had flat out refused to sell. So that's when they decided to wait. I recall them allowing the house to stay up for sale for a year and a half. And then when I, in a moment of vulnerability and hope, bought the house, that's when they decided it was time. Not to bargain, but to eliminate. Everything from the fines, the harassment, and the court orders can't be about rules. It was a form of land clearing, making me so miserable and so broken that I would leave, give up, or worse, pay to have it all surgically erased. NBSP. And if I put up a fight, NBSP, all that effort would be in vain because it would be destroyed, regardless. NBSP. I tilted my head back, breathing shallow as the screen aglow reflected in the darkened window. NBSP. As if this was simply corruption. NBSP. No, this is a system. NBSP. Not that I was the first. NBSP. Deep within the documents, I could see other disputes, other fines, and other evictions. A couple fined $8,000 for a newly built pergola, a veteran forced to take down a flagpole deemed a violation of height restrictions, and a family evicted after refusing to pay a $10,000 infrastructure fee. NBSP. All within the last 6 years. NBSP. All under Diane's lead. NBSP. I made copies of everything. Every file and every email, every invoice, stored everything in a secure server, then sent it all to the DA, a newspaper, the State Housing Authority, and 3 different watchdog organizations. NBSP. Afterward, I went home. NBSP. To my surprise, the next morning, the story had broken. NBSP. OA. President accused of scheme to seize homeowner's property in covert land grab, was the headline. NBSP. And by noon, the county had put all HOA accounts on freeze. That evening, Diane Ralston was all over the news. Her demeanor was quite stiff, with federal agents escorting her out of her house, and reporters shouting questions. Fraud, forgery, misuse of public funds, racketeering, and her husband received the same charges. In total, the board was dissolved and the HOA suspended under state supervision, with the associated grant permanently revoked. However, the most significant outcome was not the arrests. What occurred after was even more important. After years of being silenced, the neighbors finally decided to speak and share their experiences. From being fined for grass that was within regulation, holiday lights that were displayed after New Year, and even vetted for the appropriate duration for a guest car to sit within the driveway. One lady described her experience of being fined $3,000 to repaint her front door twice to comply with the mandated color scheme. Homeowners faced a regime of what they labeled a homeowners association and never dreamt of escaping from. But now, they finally could. A community meeting was called, with the new venue being an elementary school gym. Over 200 people attended. As I stood at the front, I saw that I wasn't the only one that hated this new norm. That same evening, we all decided to vote on one thing: the complete disbanding of the HOA, to create a new, transparent homeowners co-op that is elected, accountable, implements term limits, and has public budgets. For the first time in more than 10 years, Lake Haven Estates actually practiced self-governance. What happened to my dock, by the way? It was rebuilt much stronger and broader than before, and has a little bench where Mia and I still drink our morning coffee. It has a new sign: not private property, open water, open access, open hearts. Now, on weekends, the cove is filled with neighbors, kids diving off the edge, couples kayaking into the cove, and an older gentleman performing a harmonica solo while the sun sets. It has evolved beyond a dock. It is a symbol, of the aftermath when one individual has had enough, not in rage, but in love for a home, a child, and the prerogative to live free from arbitrary dominion. The legal battle took almost a year. I still haven't gathered the total damages, but I didn't have to. What I lost was inconsequential. What I gained was more valuable: calm, consideration, and the quiet understanding that I did what was right, not just for myself, but for every tenant who has ever received a fine for living outside the box. Not all HOAs are evil. Some are beneficial. They manage the roads, plan neighborhood events, and ensure cleanliness. But when they cease to serve the people and instead dominate them, what happens? When boundaries transform into instruments of enforcement, what happens? That is when the average individual needs to do the unthinkable. I lacked a law degree. I wasn't wealthy. I had no social capital. I was a father and a husband who cherished his daughter and home. That alone was sufficient. So if you are viewing this and are receiving a letter, and you think it is concerning your property boundary, your home's exterior, or solar panels, stay calm. Do not disregard it, however. Look up the bylaws. Understand your limitations and entitlements. Gather evidence. Today, it's a dock. Tomorrow, it might be your front entry or your liberties. I was this close to submitting. The thought of paying the fine, removing the wood, and moving on crossed my mind. But I did not. And because of my decision, a complete structure fell apart. So, reflect on this. What are you prepared to fight for before you draw the line?